This is East Asia Tonight.
Good evening, I'm Atali Edwards. We are starting with breaking news out of India. A Boeing Dreamliner plane operated by Air India has crashed shortly after takeoff in the western city of Ahmedabad. 242 people were on board. Now, we have live updates from India and the UK. A close call in East Asia. Tensions flare as China and Japan trade barbs over a near miss between their military jets in the Pacific. Now, an eerie calm falls on the Korean border as both sides halt loudspeaker broadcasts. The move was first ordered by South Korea's newly elected president, aimed at easing tensions. Meanwhile, Beijing is widening its welcome by expanding the 10-day visa-free transit to dozens of countries, now including Indonesia. Also in East Asia tonight, China says it's tightening its export approval process for rare earths after Donald Trump said he is done a deal with Beijing to supply the precious materials used in almost every technology under the sun. We talked to an expert about China's rare earths dominance. And social media footage shows the extent of a fire that broke out in the Chinese city of Chongqing yesterday. Before we get to the top stories from East Asia, we do have some breaking news to share out of India. Well, Indian officials say an airplane has crashed in the western city of Ahmedabad. According to local media, the incident happened immediately after takeoff near the Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel International Airport. The plane was bound for London's Gatwick Airport. It remains unclear exactly how many passengers were on board, and we will bring you more later in the program. China and Japan are trading barbs over fighter jet maneuvers. Beijing has condemned what it described as dangerous behavior by a Japanese warplane over the Pacific. The Chinese Foreign Ministry says the close proximity of the Japanese aircraft poses a threat to China's maritime and air security. It also urged the Japanese side to cease such military activities immediately. The remarks come after Tokyo accused Chinese fighter jets of flying unusually close to its military patrol plane over the weekend. Japan's defense ministry says China's J-15 fighter jet from the Shandong aircraft carrier followed its P-3C aircraft for 40 minutes on Saturday. Two other J-15 planes reportedly did the same for 80 minutes on Sunday. Tokyo also revealed this week that the Chinese aircraft carrier Shandong sailed inside the Japanese waters surrounding Okinotori. It was accompanied by 4 other vessels, as well as fighter jets and helicopters. Shandong is one of 2 aircraft carriers believed to be operating simultaneously in the Pacific. Japan's defense minister has vowed to defend the country's national security.
政府としては中国側と引き続きさまざまなレベルで意思疎通を行っていくとともに我が国の領土、領海、領空を断固として守り抜くため今後とも我が国周辺海空域における警戒監視活動等に万全を期してまいりたいと考えております。
South Korea says that North Korea has stopped loudspeaker broadcasts along their border after Seoul halted its own broadcasts on Wednesday. South Korea's newly elected president, Lee Jae-myung, ordered the move in a bid to restore trust and ease tensions. CNA's senior correspondent Lim Yun-suk has more from Seoul.
Some silence has returned along the Korea border as both the South and North halted loudspeaker broadcasts, at least for now. Previously, South Korea had been blaring K-pop songs along with news reports as part of psychological warfare in its decades-old standoff with North Korea. North Korea in turn had broadcast eerie sounds causing distress to South Koreans living near the border. One resident we spoke with says this continued till about 8 a.m. local time on Thursday. But Seoul's defense ministry said on Thursday morning that broadcasts had not been heard from North Korea along the border since Wednesday night.
현재 정치되고 있는 지역은 없습니다. 그러나 어제 야간 밤늦은 시간에 정지가 되었고 또 오늘 새벽이나 아침에 없는 것은 확실하나 계속 저희가 예의주시하고 있습니다.
South Korea had halted broadcasts under its previous liberal government led by former President Moon Jae-in, but resumed them last year under conservative leader Yoon Suk-yeol. Tensions have remained high since the breakdown of talks in Hanoi in 2019 between U.S. President Donald Trump and North Korean leader Kim Jong-un. In 2020, Pyongyang cut all communication ties with Seoul, calling it its enemy. South Korean President Lee Jae-myung, who took office last week, has said he would seek dialogue to ease tensions on the Korean peninsula. But analysts say they don't expect a major shift in North Korea's policy despite leadership change in South Korea.
이미 북은 두 개의 어떤 코리아, 양국 관계라고 선언을 했고요. 이것은 그냥 농담이 아니라고 생각합니다. 이것은 뭐 어떤 정부가 들어와도 북한의 김정은 정권은 이것은 바꿀 가능성이 저는 없다고 생각을 하거든요. 지금 어떤 남북 관계가 옛날같이 쉽게 그렇게 대화의 국면으로 나올 가능성은 저는 없다고 생각하고요. 남북 관계가 잘 될 것이라는 것은 그냥 우리의 희망일 뿐이고.
While the latest move by North Korea is a positive step, analysts say it remains to be seen if this would lead to renewed ties between the two Koreas. Lim Yan-suk, CNA, Seoul.
Well, circling back now to the Air India crash, we have Neha Punia joining us live from New Delhi, as well as Laura Westbrook from London. First to you, Neha. I know that the situation is still unfolding, but what more can you tell us?
You know, it's a rapidly evolving story, Utali, but we do have some details that have come through in the last few minutes. Air India confirming this was a 787 Dreamliner. It was operating from Ahmedabad in western India in the state of Gujarat, which is Prime Minister Narendra Modi's home state. And we do know that the plane crashed shortly after takeoff. What we are hearing is that there was a crash that happened in the residential neighborhood near the city's airport. We can see how flight tracking apps have shown that aircraft reached a height of about 600 feet before it crashed into what appears to be a residential neighborhood. There were about 242 individuals on board, about 160 of them are Indian nationals and some foreigners as well. Right now, we know that flight operations at the airport have been suspended as the focus shifts on rescue and evacuation operations. The Civil Aviation Ministry has said that they've been directed by Prime Minister Narendra Modi to ensure that rescue ops are prioritized. And like I was saying, this is Prime Minister Narendra Modi's home state, so he's been speaking to officials closely as well. And, you know, video was posted on social media also showing us huge plumes of black smoke coming out of that crash site as we wait for more details to become clear about exactly what happened and what the exact impact of that crash is.
Thanks for that, Neha. Let's turn to you now, Laura. It's, I believe, 8 minutes past 11 in the morning. Laura, what are you getting? What sort of reports are you getting at your end?
Well, we have heard a statement from Gatwick Airport. It says that it has confirmed that flight AI-171 has crashed on departure from Ahmedabad Airport today, and it was due to land at London Gatwick at 18:25 local time. And so that's the latest statement that we're getting from Gatwick Airport. It has confirmed that the plane was traveling and was due to land here this evening. According to the tracking site Flight Radar, the initial data from the flight shows that the aircraft had reached an altitude of 625 feet and then started to descend. It was scheduled to depart at around 9:50 local time. And the signal from the aircraft, according to Flight Radar, was lost at 10:08 local time at 625 feet, less than a minute after takeoff. So that's some of the latest information that we're getting from Flight Radar with this plane that reportedly has around 200 passengers. And here in the UK, the routes from India to London. This is a fairly popular route. India's UK operations are in Birmingham, Gatwick and Heathrow, with routes to a number of Indian cities such as Delhi, Mumbai and Bangalore. So really, we're starting to get some information about what has happened, but it is also quite early on with information still coming out.
Thanks for that, Laura. We are just going back to Neha. More information has unfolded. What more can you share with us, Neha?
Well, the Director General of Civil Aviation, which is the body overseeing civil aviation operations, has said that the aircraft departed Ahmedabad at about 1:39 p.m. local time and issued a mayday call moments after liftoff. And authorities saying that subsequent communication attempts by air traffic control teams went unanswered, and that's when that plane went down in a densely populated neighborhood just outside the perimeter of the Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel International Airport in the city of Ahmedabad, and that's where the rescue operations are currently targeted. We don't yet have an official confirmation of any kind of casualties or injuries, but we do know that India's civil aviation minister is currently en route, and he's going to be overseeing rescue and relief operations. And like I was telling you earlier, all flights in and out of Ahmedabad's international airport have been halted, and officials saying that that airport will remain closed until further notice. This particular aircraft in question, we're given to understand, was delivered to Air India in 2014, and India's aviation minister's office, as well as the Tata Group, which owns Air India, saying that emergency centers have been activated and support teams have been set up as well to help families get more information about passengers who were on that aircraft headed to the Gatwick Airport before that plane crashed.
Right, many thanks for that. Neha Punia speaking to us live from New Delhi, and Laura Westbrook in London. Well, we're also getting Air India saying that there were 169 Indian nationals on the flight, 53 Brits and 1 Canadian national and 7 Portuguese nationals. That's what Air India is saying. And of course, we bring you more updates of this development. Also, for more news on the Air India plane crash, you can always log on to cna.asia or our mobile app. Now, North Korean leader Kim Jong-un says that his country will always stand with Russia in a message to President Vladimir Putin for a holiday celebrating Russia's independence. A state media KCNA said that Mr. Kim praised Pyongyang's bilateral relations with Moscow and called Mr. Putin his, quote, dearest comrade. He said that both he and his country were determined to carry on relations with Russia, which he described as one between comrades in arms. Earlier this year, Pyongyang confirmed for the first time that it had sent troops to fight for Moscow in its war against Ukraine. The confirmation came under orders from the North Korean leader after months of silence. A large fire broke out at a motorcycle parking facility in the Chinese city of Chongqing yesterday. You're looking at social media footage from the scene of the blaze. Bystanders were seen running away from the flames, some of them covering their mouths from the smoke. Local fire services said no casualties were reported. The fire was first reported shortly after 1 in the afternoon and was put out about 20 minutes later. The cause of the fire, not known yet. Well, time now for a short break, but coming up next on East Asia tonight, Akio Toyoda is reappointed as Toyota Motor Chairman, unopposed for the first time in 3 years, at the company's annual general meeting. If you're just joining us, Indian officials say an airplane has crashed in the western city of Ahmedabad. It happened soon after takeoff near the Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel International Airport. And the plane was bound for London's Gatwick Airport. It remains unclear exactly how many passengers were on board. And as of now, rescue workers are still trying to put out a fire at the airport. Well, Roland Lim now joins us with more details. Roland.
Thanks, Natalie. Now, Air India has confirmed that the crash was a Boeing 7878 Dreamliner. That's one of the best-selling Boeing wide-body planes it has. Boeing shares in U.S. pre-market trade is currently down 7.8% nearly. The firm said it is aware of the report and is collecting more information. Air India is, of course, owned by Tata Group and Singapore Airlines. Related shares, well, Tata Group in Mumbai currently down more than 3%. Singapore Airlines ending the day 0.4% in the red. On to more business news. Toyota Motor shareholders have re-elected Akio Toyoda to chairman at the automaker's annual general meeting. It was the first time in 3 years that he ran unopposed after major proxy advisory firms reversed their stance from last year's meeting to recommend Mr. Toyoda's reappointment. Glass Lewis and Institutional Shareholder Services did not give a reason for the change this year. Toyota Motors shareholders' approval of Mr. Toyoda had fallen through the years, primarily due to concerns over corporate governance as well as safety scandals. Affirmative votes for Mr. Toyoda reached a record low of 72% last year. The tally for this year will likely be available in a few days' time. Shareholders have also been worried about governance matters regarding Mr. Toyoda's role in a contentious buyout of Toyota Industries. The annual general meeting was the first time they had to air their grievances directly at the Toyota Motor chairman. He was not present at the Toyota Industries AGM earlier this week. But no questions on the matter was raised. Japanese investors reportedly said that they were satisfied with the information given, and overseas shareholders have been flagging that the proposed delisting deal led by Toyota Motors undervalues Toyota Industries and strengthens the founding family's control over the group. The race is on for Chinese car makers as they battle for the biggest share in the European EV market, starting with the smallest car yet. Now, BYD's cheapest small car in the UK has hit the road, and it aims to win on price in the region in the compact car segment. The Dolphin Surf is on sale for some £18,000, that's about $25,000. Its British counterpart of BYD's popular Seagull hatchback, which in China costs less than a third of that of the model in the UK. Now, this following the recent round of discounting between car makers amid a price war in the world's largest auto market. The EV maker brought the same heat to Japan previously with an upcoming plan to release a boxy mini car. And despite the tariffs imposed by European nations on imports of Chinese-made EVs, some as high as 45%, BYD is undeterred in its expansion into the region. Market share of BYD in Europe alongside other Chinese car makers grew to 4.8% in the first 4 months of this year. This compares to the 2.9% the first quarter of last year. The majority of the sales occurred in the UK, where London has been cautious about imposing tariffs, unlike Brussels, which has increased levies on Chinese-made EVs since last year. As a result, the stock of Chinese EVs in the UK surged tenfold in the first 4 months of 2025 as compared to the same period the previous year, now accounting for approximately 3% of the total inventory. Staying on track, China's second largest car maker set to debut on the Hong Kong Stock Exchange in the third quarter. Chery will be completing its IPO by September this year, aiming to use the city as a global launching pad. Chairman Yin Tong-ye says that the move to go public in Hong Kong, that it hopes to shift over its production there to fully utilize the city's advantages. The announcement was made at the International Automotive and Supply Chain Expo. Hong Kong's chief executive John Lee called the city a good link for mainland companies to expand their global outreach and vice versa. Bloomberg earlier reported that Chery's Hong Kong IPO can go up to $1.5 billion. It will be led by an all-Chinese bank roster after international financial institutions reportedly dropped off from the deal or entirely avoided it. Now, it has been a long time coming for this automaker, a rare instance of one of China's top car exporters that has not listed. The launch of the Laos-China Railway in 2021 has sparked new interest in rail travel among ASEAN country members. It's also helping to boost tourism significantly in Southeast Asia. Now, from Thailand to Laos and across the border to China, CNA's Melissa Goh journeyed more than 1,000 kilometers by rail to bring us this story.
Rail travel has been around for over 100 years in many Southeast Asian countries. Thailand, like Malaysia, has some of the oldest railway systems in the region.
Now, Nong Khai is located more than 600 kilometers north of Thai capital Bangkok. Now, the train journey takes more than 9 hours. Now, this is where passengers get off to get their passport stamped and fill up all the immigration cards before proceeding on their journey further up north to Vientiane across the Friendship Bridge.
The nostalgic ride across the Mekong River traveled at 60 to 70 kilometers an hour. But by 2030, its transport minister said travelers will experience faster cross-border rail service linking Thailand to China via Laos.
We have also planning to have the high-speed train. At the moment, Laos 160 kilometer. The speed for Thailand, we have 250 kilometer per hour. This is the standard gauge, yes.
Laos, meanwhile, which is the only landlocked country in ASEAN, has benefited significantly since Laos-China Railways began operation 3.5 years ago. Last year, tourist arrivals in Laos increased more than 30% to 4 million.
Maybe we have to expand our track from single track to double track. The most important thing is like a safety issue. Safety is number one.
Built at a cost of almost $6 billion, the train is part of China's Belt Road Initiative. It has top speed over 160 kilometers an hour. The Laos section is over 400 kilometers, while the China stretch to Kunming spans almost 600 kilometers. Rail experts said this may usher in a new era in rail travel for ASEAN.
What it sums up as is a high-speed train that you could take the journey with from the capital Beijing all the way down through to Vientiane, all the way down to Bangkok, all the way down to Kuala Lumpur, and possibly divert through an undersea tunnel to Jakarta. I think it's not impossible to imagine that at all.
Checking in was relatively smooth, but security was tight.
Now, the train leaves on time, not a minute too early or a minute too late.
The scenery at some stretches was magnificent, from stunning mountains and rivers to lush green paddy fields.
But I think it's a good start, for Laos. I think Laos itself, I think probably need a little bit more investment in the tourism.
I wouldn't call it exactly high speed. In a way, I find it also relaxing. I'm not complaining when it's going slow. Maybe you can enjoy the view.
As the sun began to set, our train pulled into Kunming South Station in Yunnan Province.
It's a journey of over 1,000 kilometers, and it took me about 10 hours point to point from Vientiane to Kunming. Of course, minus a couple of hours going through immigration checkpoints. Now, there are many stops along the way, including scenic places like Luang Prabang and Sishuang Patna. So if you're not rushing for time, rail travel may just be the right and more sustainable mode of transportation for you.
Melissa Goh, CNA, Kunming, China.
South Korea's antitrust regulator has rejected Korean Air and Asiana Airlines' mileage integration plan. The proposal is part of a merger procedure that the two carriers have been working on for its approval since last year. Our customers have been keenly watching developments due to the different valuations of the flight miles from both airlines. The Fair Trade Commission said that the proposed scheme was not comparable to the options previously offered by Asiana Airlines. It has asked Korean Air to immediately revise and supplement the proposal. The regulator declined to disclose details and it is still planning to speak with industry experts. Korean Air said that it still remains committed to delivering a plan and will maintain communication with the FTC. Reports had speculated that Korean Air would be proposing a 1-to-1 mile conversion ratio, but observers had pointed out that it may not be possible. Now, such a conversion would put Korean Air customers at a disadvantage as their miles are typically valued higher than ASEANers. Although a ratio which prices Korean Air miles higher might be seen unfair to ASEAN members, who may argue they have no say in the merger deal. ASEAN has been encouraging customers to spend their miles as integration plans are ongoing. It expanded its mileage-only flights to include more routes to North America and will be bringing back a promotion for Jeju flights later this month. ASEAN is currently operating as Korean Air's subsidiary and will be phased out by the end of next year. And that's the latest in business. Shelley.
Thanks so much for that, Roland. Well, we are going to go for a short break now, but coming up next on East Asia tonight, China says it will honor its commitments after President Trump claimed a new trade deal between the two countries is done. And rare earths, one of the sticking points in the agreement. Philip Andrew Speed of the Oxford Institute for Energy Studies will be explaining the importance of these minerals with us after the break. You're watching East Asia tonight, and here are the top stories we are tracking. An Air India plane from Ahmedabad to London has crashed shortly after takeoff. The flight number 171 had 242 passengers and crew on board. China and Japan trading barbs after a near miss between their military jets over international waters in the Pacific. Beijing condemns what it calls Japan's dangerous behavior. And an unusual quiet on the Korean border after both sides stopped their loudspeaker broadcasts, a move first ordered by South Korea's new president Lee Jae-myung as an olive branch. China is boosting its examination and approval process for rare earths export applications. The move comes after Beijing says it will honor its trade commitments. Responding to U.S. President Donald Trump's claim that a new deal between the two countries is done, Mr. Trump made the announcement on his Truth social platform, saying that China will supply rare earth minerals and magnets in exchange for access for Chinese students to U.S. colleges and universities. Well, this next report explains why rare earths are so crucial.
Rare earth minerals are used in almost every technology you can think of. They're present in cell phones, medical devices, wind turbines, weapons, and much more.
Rare earth elements, it refers to 17 chemically similar elements within the lanthanide series. They're often described as the vitamins or the spice of industry because they have enabled our technologies to get smaller and faster and stronger and more resilient.
Elements like lanthanum and cerium, some of the most common rare earths, are used in TVs and lighting, while the application of erbium and yttrium can range from nuclear power to lasers.
It's really because of the challenges, the heavy energy and resource and pollution risks that are associated with refining rare earth elements, that production has concentrated historically in so few places.
Processing rare earths often involves the use of solvents, which can produce toxic waste. More environmentally friendly technologies are being developed, but they are not yet widely used.
For more, let's bring in Dr. Philip Andrew Speed, a Senior Research Fellow, China Energy Research Program, the Oxford Institute for Energy Studies. So thanks for joining us this evening. First up, we just heard there how critical rare earth magnets are. It's critical to everything. So when Trump hiked those tariffs, China basically hit back, cutting off exports, and global industries basically buckled. So Dr. Andrew Speed, do you think that moment exposed who really holds the upper hand in this whole U.S.-China trade-off?
Well, it's certainly easier to cut off rare earths and, as it were, punish industries around the world than just adding tariffs. And there is no replacement today for China's rare earths, particularly the refined products and the permanent magnets. So this is a very strong weapon.
So, even Elon Musk said that, his robotics business took a hit. We've heard from Ford, Suzuki, they all had to idle their production. In essence, this is sort of a wake-up call for companies around the world, you think, to basically rethink how vulnerable they are and to perhaps try to close that gap?
Well, there was a bit of a wake-up call in 2010 when China massively reduced exports of rare earths. And now we're back, and this is an even stronger position that they have. And so it's a wake-up call, but moving away from China will be difficult. Although China produces only 70% of the rare earth ores, it produces 90% of the refined rare earths and almost 100% of the refined heavy rare earths, which are critical for permanent magnets. So it's going to be a long, hard slog to make any dent in China's dominance, particularly as demand is rising.
Yeah, and there was a news report today saying that, China-backed militia, now they've secured control of new rare earth mines in Myanmar. How concerned should we be that, Beijing is shifting or adding from direct export controls to neighboring countries to show up its critical mineral dominance?
Well, Chinese have been involved in extracting rare earths, particularly the heavy rare earths in Myanmar for several years. And this is partly because China closed down much of the heavy rare earth extraction in southern China a few years ago. Why? Because they are just using acid to leach surface clays to produce the heavy rare earths. This is highly polluting. The government didn't want this happening in China, so that these enterprises then moved to work either with the military or with local militia in the northern border parts of Myanmar. So yes, it has shifted. So most of China's heavy rare earth materials come from Myanmar now. I don't see this expanding greatly overseas yet.
And when you hear, some people describing, China sort of weaponizing its control over rare earths, do you think that's a fair characterization?
I think in the short term, yes. You go back to OPEC, weaponized its control over oil when it chose to, and their control over oil was much, in percentage terms, was much less than China's control over rare earths.
Right. Earlier, you touched on this 2010 incident when I'm not quite sure if you're referring to the time when Beijing halted shipments to Japan due to a maritime dispute. And because of that, Japan's experience has often been cited. It took them years and obviously a lot of money, then expected to diversify away from Chinese rare earths. Is that the future now for the rest of the world?
Well, I think Japan didn't really succeed. It tried. It's got involvement in Australia, but many of the other projects in Vietnam and Central Asia didn't work out, so they struggled. And this is going to be a problem for the West, but we're seeing governments put more money in to looking for new deposits, building refineries and factories to make permanent magnets. The problem is, if demand continues rising, will Western efforts actually keep up with growing demand and be able to significantly dent China's current dominance? That is as yet unclear.
Now, Beijing, we know they're tracking every single kilogram of rare earth and where it's going, from mines, magnets, to final products. Would you say that's sort of like a new form of power projection, using such tools, economic tools, and leverage to achieve their geopolitical goals?
Well, you could take a sort of balanced view and say, well, actually, if you want to control your exports, you have to know where they're going and what they're being used for. And presumably they will be more reluctant to sell into the US military industry than to car making and windmills. So you could say it's very fair. If you're going to have export controls, then do it properly. But yes, they are making sure that although we are supplying you in the West with rare earths and commodities from it, then we're going to keep a very tight control and make sure that we know who is using it and for what. So in that case, the weapon is just a little more sophisticated. They can make it softer or harder, depending on the political and economic conditions at the time.
Always good speaking with you. Thanks so very much for your insights. Dr. Philip Andrew Speed, Senior Research Fellow, China Energy Research Program, the Oxford Institute for Energy Studies. Right, going back to one of our top stories now, an Air India plane from Ahmedabad to London has crashed shortly after takeoff. The flight number 171 had 242 passengers and crew on board. Now, it happened soon after takeoff near the Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel International Airport. The plane was bound for London's Gatwick Airport. Let's once again go to our correspondent in Delhi, Neha Punia, for more updates. Neha, what more have you heard?
Tali, it's still a developing situation and information coming in drips and drabs, but we do now have the first official comment from India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi. Remember, the crashes happened in his home state of Gujarat, a region that he governed for decades before becoming Prime Minister and moving to New Delhi. He said the tragedy in Ahmedabad has stunned and saddened us. In a post on social media platform X, he said it's heartbreaking beyond words. In this sad hour, my thoughts are with everyone affected by it. He says he's been in touch with ministries and authorities who are working to assist those affected. We do know that he's spoken to the Civil Aviation Minister, who's on his way to Ahmedabad, who will be overseeing the rescue and relief operations. What we do know so far of this crash is that it happened just minutes after takeoff. The Civil Aviation Authority of India is saying that just about 9 minutes after that plane took off this Thursday afternoon, about 1:39 p.m. local time, it issued a mayday call, and efforts to communicate with the airplane after that were unsuccessful. It then crashed into a heavily populated neighborhood just on the perimeter of that international airport in the city of Ahmedabad in western India, and that's where we've seen those thick plumes of smoke emerging from. That's where rescue efforts are currently focused on. The Tata Group, that also owns and operates Air India, are saying that they are cooperating with local agencies, that the emergency services centers have been activated, and that they're also trying to set up some sort of helpline desk to ensure that families of passengers and crew on board that aircraft can get more details about what's happened.
Thanks very much for that, Neha Punia, speaking to us from New Delhi. And out of the 240-odd people who were on board, most of them were Indian nationals, 169 of them, and 53 Britons. That is what Air India is saying. And of course, we'll be plying you with more information as it comes through. For now, we are going to go for a short break, but coming up next on East Asia Tonight, ASEAN Chair Malaysia upbeat about the ongoing US-China trade talks and its impact on Southeast Asia's economic goals. Rising seas, vanishing coastlines. Can Asia-Pacific turn the tide? At the UN Ocean Conference in France, countries are pushing for answers. And one expert tells us why ocean action cannot wait. Indonesian travelers can now stay up to 10 days in China if they're making a transit starting today. Well, Indonesia is the latest addition to China's 240-hour visa-free transit policy. Well, the scheme now applies to travelers arriving from 55 countries, including the US, UK, and Russia. It's all part of Beijing's plan to boost business and tourism. Transit travelers can enter the country through 60 air and sea ports under this expanded scheme. And they can also travel between 24 regions during their stay, including major ones like Beijing, Shanghai, and Guangdong. Malaysia, as ASEAN chair this year, is hopeful that the ongoing trade talks between US and China will have a positive effect on the bloc's economic growth and may even expedite ASEAN's economic goal. In May, members of the Southeast Asian bloc had laid out plans to become the world's fourth largest economy by 2045. But Malaysia's trade minister says this could be achieved as early as 2030, provided the region maintains a steady GDP growth rate of 4 to 5%, while carefully navigating the shifts in global trade.
The targeted growth, forecasted growth for ASEAN for the year 2025 is 4.7%. things are very dynamic, right? So it really depends on the global economic situation. I just want to caution that expectation for investments is not going to be so easy to do the forecast going forward.
The minister was speaking at the launch of a 5-year strategic plan for ASEAN Economic Community in Kuala Lumpur this morning. The plan serves as a comprehensive roadmap for the bloc to carve its way forward while navigating evolving business needs and emerging challenges. He added that ASEAN must speed up integration and embrace digitalization to continue to attract investments from major trading partners such as US and China. Meanwhile, approved investment in Malaysia for the first quarter of this year grew 3.7% to more than $21 billion. And Mr. Zafrul will be heading to Washington next week for Malaysia's trade negotiations with the US.
Malaysia has been imposed a tariff of 24%. So, of course, the first target is to reduce that, right? Second target is there are sectors that we feel should be even going below that 10%. We need to show that, why it's important, and we want to negotiate that further to go below that floor of 10% for certain sectors that is important to Malaysia and the US.
A veteran Singapore diplomat, Kishore Mahbubani, says that in the current global context, the ASEAN-China partnership is one of the very few positive examples of cooperation that the rest of the world can follow. He points to how trade between both sides grew to almost $975 billion in 2022 from about $40 billion in 2002. Mr. Mahbubani was speaking at the 2025 Land Sea Economic Forum, which brings together Chinese and international partners to explore new opportunities for Chinese industries expanding into the region. He noted that the US is now rejecting the very free trade system that it created. He referenced Singapore Prime Minister Lawrence Wong, who said that the rest of the world does not have to turn to protectionism.
We will identify other partners to join us and work around this to ensure resilience and maintain critical parts of the multilateral system while laying the foundations for a possible new and different global system that can be achievable later.
Well, a keynote speaker says one silver lining of global trade tensions is a deepening of regional integration. He Dong is chief economist of the ASEAN Plus 3 Macroeconomic Research Office. Now, Plus 3 refers to China, Japan, and Korea.
Going beyond the short term, we think that the region can make use of the resilience and the further regional integration. That would provide a very important source of growth, so further accelerate export diversification, including services, and the deepen regional intra-regional integration, build foundations for the future.
The race is on to tackle one of the biggest blind spots in global climate finance, the ocean. It covers more than 70% of the planet, but remains one of the least funded areas on the Sustainable Development Agenda. Now, as countries gather in the French city of Nice for the 3rd UN Ocean Conference this week, CNA's Grace Chin takes a look at how urgent the issue has become.
Rising sea levels have sounded alarm bells for years, but global action still falling short. More than 20 million people are displaced by water-related disasters each year, and the Asia-Pacific is feeling it hardest. In some parts of the region, sea levels are rising up to 3 times faster than the global average. That's putting coastlines, communities, and entire ecosystems at risk. Singapore is no exception. As a low-lying island nation, it faces growing threats from the ocean. But as a global maritime and financial hub, it's also in a powerful position to lead.
Here in Singapore, the question isn't just about how to adapt, but how to lead on ocean innovation and sustainable finance. Then what will it take to turn the tide?
We spoke with Dr. Lizzie McLeod, Global Ocean Director at U.S.-based nonprofit organization, the Nature Conservancy, to find out what needs to happen next.
The ocean provides half of the oxygen that we breathe. It feeds 3 billion people through the fisheries that it supports. And it's been really important in helping to buffer the impacts of climate change by absorbing excess heat. But it's also super important for our economy.
It generates over $2.5 trillion annually, and I think a lot of people just don't fully appreciate and understand the incredible benefits that it provides.
The Asia-Pacific region is especially critical. Home to 90% of marine trade, over half the world's mangroves, and a third of coral reefs, it boasts more underwater biodiversity than anywhere else on Earth. Protecting these habitats is vital for millions who rely on fishing and aquaculture for their livelihoods.
We're working in Indonesia with our Indonesia team, Yayasan Konservasi Alam Nusantara, to help develop reef-positive businesses. So these are ways of supporting businesses that are just starting out and incubating them so that they're generating revenue, but they're also, importantly, helping to conserve valuable coral reefs and mangroves around the region.
Global targets aim to protect 30% of oceans by 2030, but only 8% is protected today, and just 3% fully. Many areas exist only on paper, without effective management or funding.
We call them paper parks. So they're lines on a map, but they're not actually generating the benefits, whether it's the conservation benefits or the economic benefits that they're designed for. So one of the important things we need to do is to really lean in and make sure that they're effectively managed.
Individuals can play a role by getting informed, raising awareness, and urging governments to act decisively.
Well, one of the biggest priorities at the UN Ocean Conference is getting 60 countries to ratify the High Seas Treaty. So making these bold commitments to make sure that these high seas are protected.
That's exactly what was in focus at the 2025 UN Ocean Conference. On Monday, 18 more countries ratified the High Seas Treaty, bringing the total to 49, just 11 short of the 60 needed. Once in effect, the treaty will establish the first legal framework for protecting marine biodiversity in international waters.
Now some headlines from media outlets in East Asia. From Yonhap, South Korea and Vietnam have agreed to step up economic cooperation after a phone call between Presidents Lee Jae-myung and Long Kong. The two leaders are looking to collaborate in strategic sectors such as high-speed rail and nuclear power. Now, the South China Morning Post says that China's homegrown AG-600, the world's largest amphibious aircraft, has been given the green light for mass production. The Civil Aviation Administration certified the plane on Wednesday. A city in Osaka has allowed its civil servants to don fictitious work names on their name tags to protect them from hostile visitors. Asahi Shimbun says this is part of a larger response to the problem of customer harassment at stores and public offices across Japan. Before we go, here is a reminder of our top story. An Air India plane from Ahmedabad to London has crashed shortly after takeoff. The airline says the flight was carrying 242 passengers and crew. The Boeing 787 Dreamliner plane was operating Flight A171. Now, India's Civil Aviation Minister says rescue teams have been mobilized and all efforts are being made to ensure medical aid and relief support at the site. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi says that tragedy in Ahmedabad has stunned the nation and his thoughts are with all those affected. And that wraps up East Asia tonight, but the news continues. You can find our headlines anytime at cna.asia, and you can also find us on Facebook and YouTube. Thanks for watching.